Welcome to the role of psychological concepts in coaching, where the realms of psychology and coaching unite. I am Nancy Alhyari, your guide on this journey, brought to you by the passionate teams that trace and thrive through coaching. We're dedicated to equipping coaches like you with the cutting-edge evidence-based strategies to enhance your practice and impact. From emotional intelligence to neurodiversity, each episode is a deep dive into the tools and techniques that can transform your coaching and your clients' lives. Let's embark on this journey together, one insight at a time. What role do psychological concepts play in coaching, especially when supporting neurodivergent individuals? Welcome to the role of psychological concept in coaching, where today's episode is all about neurodivergent coaching. Joining us is Uzma Akser, the director and founder of UACC, an executive and leadership coach, neurodiversity consultant, and a true neuro-inclusion advocate. Uzma Akser is not only a dedicated certified autism specialist, but also a passionate mentor and the visionary founder of Uzma Akser Coaching and Consulting, UACC. Her personal journey as the parent of a child on the autism spectrum has shaped her compassionate and expert approach to coaching and consulting. Uzma's work extends beyond her practice. She established the Bridging the Gap Parent Support Group to provide cohesive support to families navigating autism, both in the UAE and internationally. In this episode, Uzma explains what neurodivergent coaching is and why it is important for supporting neurodiverse individuals, such as those with autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. She shares how neurodivergent coaching differs from traditional coaching practices, emphasizing the importance of tailored approaches that accommodate the specific needs of each individual. Uzma also discusses key strategies, challenges, and success stories from her practice, illustrating how neurodivergent coaching can lead to significant positive changes. Join us as we dive into this essential conversation about embracing neurodiversity in coaching and empowering individuals to thrive. Hi, Uzma. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. To start off, can you explain what neurodivergent coaching is and how it is crucial for supporting neurodiverse individuals?
Yeah, sure, Nancy. I mean, it's a really interesting question you have here. Coaching, as you know, is a professional partnership where a coach, guides a client through a structured process to clarify goals, overcome obstacles, achieve personal or professional development. We focus on coaching as a forward-facing thing, right? It's not like therapy where we're looking at the past. However, neurodivergent coaching, which I believe a specialized form of coaching tailored to support individuals with neurodiverse conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia. And personally, me as a neurodivergent coach, my main focus is really to understand and embrace the unique strengths the neurodivergent individual brings to me and how they process information. As we know, every neurodivergent is different, they're unique. So really, we have to see how we can tailor make our approach when it comes to coaching on neurodivergent individuals. So we take tailored approaches that accommodate their specific needs. We have to be very mindful, Nancy, when it comes to neurodivergent coaching. We have to look at the sensory needs. We have to look at their emotional regulation. We have to look at the executive functioning skills. There's so many different layers when it comes to coaching a neurodivergent individual that we have to be very mindful. And I'm not saying in regular coaching we're not, of course we are, but when it comes to neurodivergent coaching specifically, I just think it's crucial to support them where they are and recognize, their strengths first and foremost, and then really hone into the skills that they have or they need the support with, if that makes any sense.
Well, definitely. That's a great introduction, Uzma.
Thank you.
And highlighting the importance of this specialized support, how does divergent coaching differ from the traditional coaching practices?
Yeah, it differs from traditional coaching, as I think, on a personal level, as a neurodivergent coach, it's a really tailored approach. We have to accommodate unique needs of every individual. And if you've met one person, on the autism spectrum, for example, you've met one person on the autism spectrum. And that just shows you how different every individual is. So we have to embrace neurodiversity and provide this, different accommodations, I guess, or considerations. And again, going back to their sensory needs, they may be sensitive to sound, light, certain environment. we have to look at their emotional regulation and how they are when it comes to a typical coaching session. It could be the executive functioning skills, just working on our coaching questions or the way we communicate with them. It could be different. There could be clients that are verbal, non-verbal. So really finding a way of communicating with them it's important. So taking a very specialized approach empowers neurodivergent coaching and just recognizing their strengths and developing skills and advocating really for their needs, which I think is a really best way to move forward.
Thank you. The way that you talked about how every neurodivergent person is different, it makes me think of how do you assess the needs of your neurodivergent clients?
This is a great question, Nancy. And I think assessing the needs of neurodivergent clients, like you've mentioned, is obviously so important before we start coaching. So on a personal level, I don't just work with neurodivergent individuals. I work with neurodivergent individuals themselves and their, carers, their parents, for example, educators and corporates. So I take a holistic approach. So my clients could be, neurodivergent individuals themselves or people that are around them. So the way I assess, obviously, it would differ per kind of person, I guess. The first thing I really do is have a thorough discussion with my clients to really understand their individual strengths, their challenges, the goals, and the preferences that they may have. And really through that conversation, it provides me valuable insights into the unique strengths, which then allows me to tailor my coaching approach. I think with coaching, it's so personal that we have to do that regardless of it being neurodivergent coaching. So when it comes to neurodivergent coaching, it's that extra, I guess, level of conversation that we're having to understand. I'll just give you an example of, it could be parents that come to me. They may have certain challenges, at home with their child. They may be stressed because there's certain behaviors they may not understand, or there may be some academic goals they want to set for their child. So that could be, a client that comes to me. And then I could have an educator who wants to make their learning environment inclusive and wants not just coaching, I guess, training as well, and then coaching. And if we have a coaching session on how to create this inclusive learning environment for their neurodivergent student, it's really honing into seeing how they would be working with their learner in the classroom and then creating that coaching situation for them, asking those questions that need to be asked for them to then work on their learner in the classroom. So I guess it varies because my clients are vast, I guess. I work with different clients. So my main answer would be here really having that conversation and really understanding what their needs are and then meeting them where they are.
Thank you, Uzma. So understanding those differences really clarifies the unique value of neurodivergent coaching. Are there any key theories or research that have shaped practices of neurodivergent coaching?
I think there's several theories, Nancy, when you look at it. There's several theories and research that has influenced the practices, within neurodiversity coaching. The one that I like to use, or the one that sticks with me more, would be the social model of disability. And the reason being, it's because it emphasizes that disability arises from barriers in our society. So rather than deficits in individuals. So really, it's so important how we as a society portray disability. If there were no barriers, imagine if there were no barriers in our society, then a neurodivergent individual would not feel excluded or left out. So this is why I like to use the social model of disability, because it's a very strength-based model. And it's really helped me practice my coaching. It's reminding me every day when I meet my clients the importance of recognizing the unique, again, abilities that they have and the strengths that they bring to the table and honing into that. So this is why I really like to use this model. That's, I think, to do anything and to work on any kind of client or any session that you walk into, it's really honing into their strengths and, the challenges that they may have, and then asking them, what goals or preferences they have in order to move forward in the session. And I think the only way we can do that is by having the coaching conversation, which obviously provides us as coaches the valuable insight.
Awesome. The personalized approach you've been describing seems very essential for effectiveness. Could you please share a memorable experience or incident where neurodivergent coaching facilitated significant change or success?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's lots of different examples, but the one that really, whenever anyone asks me this question, the one that really sticks out is a client of mine who came to me when his parents brought him to me when he was 26, I believe. And he had been to a special needs center, for years since he was a child. And he was verbal, but he didn't have the I guess, a social pragmatic language. And as a young adult, he had come to me, and we were working on his communication and just his language, right? Just his receptive language. Initially, when he came to me, it was all about him, and he didn't know there was a world beyond him. And just as we started working together, not just with him, but also his mum in particular, and we set certain goals, and the mum wanted the kind of main focus of the coaching to be around creating goals where he can now start his conversation skills, do certain tasks, live a somewhat independent life. And by the end of it, Nancy, it was amazing because he'd now started having these conversations. I mean, I'm not saying he was having lengthy conversations, but he was able to, have this initial conversation with people around him, family, friends, his grandparents when he would visit them at the weekend, people just outside, his coaches, for example, swimming coach, his tennis coach, his piano teacher. And he was able to then move on to that level where he could talk to them, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Talk about his choices, preferences that he has, likes or dislikes. And that was a huge win. I mean, that was really a big win for me because when I first met him, he was a different person. And just going through the coaching and also the mentoring, I would like to add, because there was a lot of mentoring that was involved, we were able to then move on to the next level, which was so good because he was now able to hold conversations and just get around easily, without feeling anxious. Because again, we have to understand when a person isn't able to communicate, there could be so many different levels of anxiety that could come into that, frustration, anger. So just helping him and supporting him in this area meant that he could live more of a fruitful life, and that meant a lot to me on a personal level and a professional level.
That's truly inspiring. It shows how the real-world impact of tailored coaching. I'm curious, Uzma, because usually like in coaching, client has the full autonomy, for example, to choose the goals of today's session. And since, for example, this client was nonverbal, how do you navigate that? Do you always have to include the parents or the caretaker, or is there a different approach?
Yeah, and this is really good, Nancy. This is a lovely question because you're right. If the client isn't, again, looking at their cognitive ability, able to, kind of sit in a session alone, then yeah, I mean, the parent has a big part to play, absolutely. So in this situation, it was the mum, and she was very eager to set goals with me, right? Every mother knows their child better than any professional. And she set goals. She knew what she wanted, so we worked on them. And then every session, he had a carer. So the carer was observing me as well. And then he would, whatever goals that we would set in the session, the carer would then take them away and then work with him during the week and obviously relay those, goals to the family. So it was a more holistic approach that we took because I believe any kind of therapy or any kind of coaching isn't just that one session a week and we can achieve the results. If it's a neurodivergent individual, for example, they will need a team of people to support them. So we did take that approach where he had his parents, he had his, carer, siblings were helping, and then we set goals that were working accordingly during the week, and then he'd come back and let me know how things were during that week, and then we would move on to the next goal, I guess. And that's really the beauty of it. When you're working with neurodivergent individuals, sometimes you do have to work with a team of people and not just them.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Uzma. And from your experience, Uzma, what strategies you would say are most effective in empowering neurodivergent individuals?
God, that's several strategies, I guess. Several strategies,
Pick
yeah,
the one that
Nancy.
you most love.
I guess the ones that I would use more, I guess in my coaching sessions would be the first thing I like to create a safe space, for the client. A lot of my sessions are on, over Zoom, really understanding that the client feels comfortable online and is comfortable using Zoom. Sometimes clients do like to meet in person. This one particular client I had, she loved Zoom because she liked looking at herself. That was her incentive. So Zoom was the best thing because she could see herself. And then obviously we would have a brilliant session because she just had this kind of mirror in front of her. So really creating that safe space is important. And honing into their strength, like we mentioned, and really the strategies I would say that are important and the techniques I guess I use are more managing, like if there's any kind of sensory sensitivity, bearing in mind that if that's there, being mindful about creating a less noisy environment for them, for example, being mindful about the lighting, the sound, the smells even, certain smells could trigger a person. Looking at the emotional regulation, how they are, what may trigger them if I say something. So this is why it's really important before starting any session is to talk to the family or talk to that person themselves if they have that cognitive ability, about finding out really what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Because there might be things that we would do traditional coaching that we think may work for a neurodivergent client, but actually may not. So really finding out what's best for them and then creating that environment for them is important. Being encouraging, really being encouraging, showing a lot of support, giving them a lot of credit for what they're doing, because it's not easy. We have to recognize they're really putting a lot of effort in to do certain tasks. Something that might be easy for us might be very, very challenging for them, and it takes a lot more of an effort. So just showing them, that we're proud of them, we're motivating them, we're behind them, but their success is really important.
I love that. It's like letting the client be who they are and just, coach for the whole client and adapt your coaching and creating that safe space.
Yeah.
These strategies sound like they can make a real difference. However, I'm curious about the challenges. What common challenges do neurodivergent individuals could face in coaching sessions, and how can you address them?
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good question, because there are challenges. I mean, I've mentioned the strategies that we take, but then there could be, strategies that we may have to use because there's certain challenges that may arise in the session. And I mean, the first one that really comes to my mind would be, the noise, for example. Certain noise might trigger them, certain sounds might trigger them. So that's important to be mindful about that. Certain environments, may not be comfortable for them to work in. So really kind of providing the right environment throughout the session, really kind of closely looking at and establishing that clear communication throughout, not just the beginning, but throughout the session and throughout the sessions, really, to see what challenges may arise. So there could be a certain challenge in one session. We may overcome that, but then everything will be okay for the next maybe 3 or 4 sessions. But then depending on how their day has been or depending on how they're feeling, there may be other challenges. So we have to be very quick at adapting. We have to be very, I guess, on the go to understand and kind of read between the lines and see what is going on with them, and then creating an environment that, easy for them to manage. I guess that's really important. And just minimizing certain, sensory overload. Another one that comes to mind, communication, could be one thing. They're very black and white, and there's nothing in between. So really with our questioning, sometimes it could be very tricky because with coaching, we have the open-ended questions, right? But when it comes to neurodivergent individuals, they need questions to be on point so they understand, right? 100%. So sometimes these, like metaphors that we may use or examples that we may give, they might not understand. So asking them questions slowly is important. Being very clear and concise with your language is important. Giving them time to answer. This is a really big one. And I always share this with my clients. When you're asking a question, we're always in a hurry, Nancy, to jump in and fill in the answer or the gap in the conversation. It's just human nature. But when we're asking a neurodivergent individual a question, it's so important to have that break. And I always say to my clients, count to 10 in your head and wait for that person to, digest the question, process the question, and then allow them the space to answer it. And if they're struggling to answer, then you can put those little prompts in, or put a little word here, a little word there to help them, but really provide and allow the space for them to communicate with you in the most effective way. So there are steps that you can take when it comes to any challenges that may take place in a session, but actually having these kind of tools in your pocket in advance as a coach is really important to kind of get the best out of the session.
Wow, that's really awesome. While you were talking, I was thinking, what about the other end? Like, what if a client would come in with having a challenge? For example, especially with the noise, especially if they're working in a corporate setting and the office that they're working on, for example, has a noise that is bothering them for their daily tasks. How do you usually help this client to navigate that challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true. I mean, there's many individuals that are out at work and this question that you're asking, this could be a conversation in itself, Nancy. I mean, to keep it short and concise, I would say self-advocacy, really working with the clients, working on self-advocacy and coaching them, mentoring them. And I like to put in the mentoring as well, because sometimes it just isn't coaching when it comes to neurodivergent individuals. Sometimes they need that added kind of push, right? And that support. So guiding them through the self-advocacy route, because there is a lot of fear around being very honest and having that disclosure of, I'm on the spectrum, for example, and, sound triggers me, and can I have a quiet room to work in? Just saying that to an employer may mean that the employer might not be able to accommodate to their needs, and then they might lose their job. Simple, right? It sounds very simple, but that can actually happen. It can happen in a corporate setting. It can happen in an educational setting where children are rejected from schools, for example, because specifically on this reason. So it's really teaching them how to convey this message, without feeling that worry or fear of, losing their job, for example. And then you could take it to the next level where you might need to work with the employers, with HR, for example, for them to understand what, neurodiversity is, for them to understand, when you are taking on a neurodivergent employee, they are bringing so many different skills to the table, but there may be certain accommodations or modifications that need to be placed, which is okay, because that's how it is with neurodiversity, right? We're working with different minds. We're working with different, like we said, one person on the autism spectrum is that one person on the autism spectrum, for example. So if you're working with so many different people, and there may be, certain people are going through different challenges, the main thing is accommodating their needs. And if an employer can do that, that's brilliant. You're keeping this highly skilled individual at work. But if you're not able to, because of a certain accommodation that you're not able to place, you're technically losing that employee. I mean, this is a conversation, like I said, in itself.
Losing
but
talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got this individual who's afraid, to address it. So in a coaching session, going back to your question, it would be working on building that confidence and how to go forward and talk about, can you please, accommodate to my needs? And that can be through, we could be using social stories, for example. We could be using video modeling to give them that confidence when they can be watching, because a lot of neurodivergent individuals, they mimic, right? They learn from that. So they could watch something on YouTube, for example, and how a person has gone into work and spoken to an employer and asked them for a certain accommodation to be placed because they need that, going back to the noise, right? So you could use various tools to support them. You can give them, a visual story. It could be a social story. It could be video modeling. So there's different tools that you can use to support them in the coaching session to get to that level of, I guess, confidence to get to where they want to be.
Beautiful. And that shows the importance of education, awareness, advocating for the inclusivity in the corporate and education systems.
Yeah.
And navigating these challenges does require skill and understanding. Brings me to the next question. What skills are essential for coaches working with neurodivergent clients that could help them navigate these challenges and help their client better?
Yeah, I think, the skills that are essential for coaches, really showing empathy, that's a big one. Being flexible, that's really important, because again, we don't know what's happened in their day when they've come to us for that coaching session, and really allowing that space for them to feel safe and talking about what they need to be talking about without any judgment, and really providing active listening. I think that's really important. And as coaches, really, we must understand executive functioning, sensory needs, executive functioning skills, and emotional regulation when it comes to clients. Like I mentioned, every individual is so different. I guess being flexible in the sense that we have to look at that person as that one individual. I can't stress that enough, because we have to provide a specialized coaching session for them to really gain a deeper understanding in what's going on. Various tools and techniques we use, as neurodivergent coaches. In my case, I like to really use a lot of visuals. I think visuals are so powerful when it comes to a neurodivergent learner. So I do like to use a lot of visuals. I like to talk about tools and techniques that can help them, plan and organize their day, for example. And again, that could be visual reminders, different apps that they may want to use. When it comes to emotional regulation, it could be, I use the zones of regulation on a regular basis when it comes to my clients. And that really looks into the emotions of the person and names those emotions. And it kind of has a certain vocabulary that is being used throughout the whole kind of curriculum, which helps them. And again, going back to one of my clients, we're using the zones a lot because that client wasn't able to understand or recognize that there's certain things that she's saying that would upset a colleague, for example, or a family member. So going back to the zones, we would talk about their emotions first and address their emotions, and then take it further and look at the environment, and then take it on to how the other person feels and how would you address certain things, because they're very direct. So there's some things they might say which are very, very direct, which could be upsetting to certain people. So how to kind of create that boundary. And this especially helps a lot with that. Recently, I had a friend mention to me that her son had started working and in a month had lost his job, unfortunately. Honestly, Nancy, the reason being because he was so direct. He saw it how it was and he said it how it was. And the employers didn't like that. There was no kind of boundary in between. Yeah, they did get rid of him, unfortunately, but it was more of in a polite way. But obviously he knew why. So if you're working with a client like that, it's really trying to use so many different tools and techniques that you can, hone into when it comes to teaching them or guiding them or coaching them through the process of, okay, if you are going to come into this situation at work, for example, how can you manage it? What can you do? So giving them the tools as well, not just us as coaches, really, it's giving them the tools as well to have in a daily setting where they have to manage themselves. That could, again, be, the visuals, it could be social stories, it could be mindfulness techniques, for them to just take a break and do some breathing exercises for a few minutes just to regulate themselves. Just simple things like that, really, that we could work on in a coaching session with our client is really important.
And the story that you told us about, I'm sorry to hear about your friend's kid, is a testament why most neurodivergent people at the end, they start their own businesses.
Yes. Yeah, big thing. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the skills of empathy, flexibility, and being open-minded, active listening, and keep up on learning. Because I do feel like as a neurodivergent coach, a person or the coach needs to keep up to date with all the research, the studies, how different people are. As you said, like each neurodivergence is different, and all emphasize the importance of person-centered coaching when we talk about neurodivergent coaching. All of that, we need to be equipped with the tools, techniques, and always be creative and creating new ones, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
And adapting them to the different clients, neurodivergent clients we have. The right tools can indeed be transformative for our clients. So on a deeper level, how can, because you did emphasize the importance of being open and empathetic, how can coaches foster that stronger understanding and connection with their neurodivergent clients? Because, as you said, sometimes they can be a little bit direct, and if we are, as coaches, a little bit sensitive, we can take it the wrong way, yeah?
Absolutely.
So how can we foster that stronger understanding and connection?
That's a really important, a very valid and important question, actually, Nancy. How can we? I think first it's education, and it's recognizing that these individuals are different, they're unique, they're special, but they can still live in the society and the community that we have. Right? I think it's important for us to understand and not to take things personally. Like if they've come to us as a client, then obviously we have to address that with an open mind. If we're going to start taking things personally, or we're going to get, emotional about it because there's a certain way of them talking, or there's a certain way of them, dealing with the situation, then we have to respect that. This is what neurodiversity is, and this is how we're going to embrace it, and this is how we're going to move forward in our society. So it's a big responsibility. And now that you're asking this question, it's a really big responsibility on us to be flexible, open-minded, and not get so emotionally attached. And I think this is really important and this is why parents do come to me a lot, because parents often, need that extra support, because when they're with their children all the time, they're emotionally attached, right? If they have to go to school, for example, and advocate for their children, sometimes it may not look like it's advocacy. Sometimes it could be, an angry voice with the teacher, for example, or shouting or getting really upset because certain things are not going to plan with the child in the class, or the IEP goals are not being met, for example. This is why it's important as a coach to kind of look at it from out of the box, if that makes sense, and really being open-minded and not judgmental. And I think anyway, as coaches, we have to do that. So more so reminding yourself when you work with a neurodivergent individual that there may be certain things that they say that we really can't take personally, and we can work on addressing those in a session.
Certainly. I feel because sometimes the neurodivergent person is trying to control these impulses all day. They get to that coaching session, their all energy have already drained down. And that's why it's important to understand that it's not about me. It's about them having a difficult day or just a normal day. Because as you said before, what is normal to neurotypical person, it could be real hard work for a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And Nancy, it's like an example of a child. So a child could be at school, following the rules all day. There's so much going on between lessons, the transitioning, and just processing all this information and the noise and the social environment. There's so much going on. And then the minute they come home, a lot of parents come to me and say, well, my child comes home and has this huge meltdown. Well, the reason for this meltdown could be they've just had such an overloaded day that they're now in a safe space. They're around their parents, they feel safe and secure, that they're having this meltdown because they've just had such an overloaded day. And that could be, again, a client coming to you. They feel so safe with you. They feel connected. They know that this environment's, non-judgmental and, of course, I mentioned safe, that they just have to vent, for example, or they have this meltdown. And that's okay. So long as we know how to handle that coaching session, so long as we know how we've got those tools that we can, go back to and use, then we can obviously manage that situation in a more professional manner. But like I've said, I mean, if there's certain challenges that are beyond, coach, then obviously we do need that help. And it is a holistic approach, and we do need to see anyone else that may be able to support us or them even. But if you can, as a coach, manage that situation, then of course, you go ahead and do that.
Excellent. What last takeaway or advice would you leave our coach listeners today?
I mean, really, for me, I think the journey that I'm on, Nancy, is, this is a very personal journey for me. Firstly, I'm a parent of a child on the spectrum, so this is why I'm here and doing what I'm doing. My biggest thing, and I would often think, how can I address this to the world, right? If I had this opportunity to address this to the world, what can I do? And really, the only way I can think about is education. Education and educating the society or even the community that we live in about neurodiversity. And raising that awareness through education. Because a lot of people come to me and say, well, we're afraid we might use the wrong words or the wrong, terminology. We might offend somebody. That's a start. You have that conscious mind. So learn about it, educate yourself about it. And whatever you learn, share it with the people around you. And let's learn to embrace it and not create a divide. Because on a personal level, I've seen that, on a personal level with my child growing up and me as a parent, I've seen a divide in our community. And it's not nice, it's a feeling of exclusion, which nobody wants to feel. So I think just once you educate yourself and you really understand what neurodiversity is and how you can, work with someone in the community, for example, someone at school, at work, in a safe way and feel confident. That's the main thing really moving forward, and not to be afraid about it. And if you have any questions, ask those questions. And, these parents want to be approached, they don't want to feel like they, a different part of the society. And let's bridge that gap really. That's so important to bridge that gap between a neurodiverse individual and their family and the neurotypical world, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to just say education is really important.
Well, that's a beautiful mission you have there, Uzma. And
thank you.
The more we talk about it, the more people will know about it. And hopefully that division one day will be there's nothing, will be erased.
Yeah, I can't wait. That'd be amazing.
Yes, yeah. These takeaways are very crucial for anyone, not just as coaches, but as parents, as educators, and even as business owners, HR personnel. So lastly, for those looking to specialize or learn more about neurodivergent coaching, do you have any resources, books, or courses that you recommend?
For me, when I first started this journey as a parent, I would really go to stories written by other parents, because I think when you listen to or read lived experience, it makes a huge difference. And you feel less isolated. You feel like it's not only you on this journey, struggling or facing various challenges with your child. So there's one book that really, I love it. And when I read this book, I felt like it was written about me. It was so weird because when I was reading it, everything that this parent was experiencing felt like my own personal experiences. So it's called Let Me Hear Your Voice. And it's written by Catherine Morris. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I often go back to this when I'm feeling, at times low, or I just need a little bit of a boost. It really helps me because it doesn't make me feel so isolated in my parental journey, I guess. And on a professional level, there's lots of books, and Nancy, that, I've been using over the years, I guess, to gain that insight and knowledge about autism and really trying to understand, my own child and, my clients. The one that I kind of use a lot called Neurotribes, and it's a legacy of autism, and that's written by Steve Silberman. It's a nice book because it's a reference book, and you can keep going back to it and understanding, the kind of designs for a neurodiverse world, just looking at different things in the book that can help you navigate what's going on a daily basis. So those are the two that I really would like to recommend. And in terms of resources, there's a lot now. There's a lot online. There's, we've got social media. Back in the days, we didn't have all this. So there's a lot of professionals that are on social media that are sharing tips and tools. And if you feel comfortable following, certain professionals there, absolutely do so. And in terms of courses, even now, Nancy, there's so much out there when it comes to courses online. You can purchase, the self-paced or the live interactive courses. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources now that are out there as we move forward when it comes to talk about neurodiversity. We are heading, I'd like to say, the right direction when it comes to the resources for learning. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. And even now, there's a lot more research than it used to be. And hopefully the masks of the neurodivergence eventually can be taken off, and we have that world where there's no divide between typical and neurodivergent person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree, Nancy, definitely. And I think research is so important. And you're right, the more research that, takes place, the more we will have that knowledge and understanding. And that's what we want, don't we? We don't want this divide. Sitting on this side of the fence, right? I mean, you know as well, Nancy, it's not nice. It's not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different emotions that we go through, and we don't want that feeling of isolation for us or our children or the next generation. So it's important that we do the work now and create that change. Absolutely.
Thank you, Uzma, for sharing your expertise and recommendations. The more we share, the more we talk about it, the more people know about it. Thank you, Uzma, again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Nancy, for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on the role of psychological concepts in coaching. Stay curious, stay inspired, and join us next time as we continue to explore the transformative power of psychology in coaching. Until then, keep thriving and making a difference. I am Nancy Alhyari on behalf of Race and Thrive Through Coaching, wishing you all the best on your coaching journey.